And hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Cable. Chapters is the television show that profiles local authors, editors, and publishers in our community. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. Our episode this time comes to you from Empire Books and News at Pullman Square in downtown Huntington. And we are pleased to have as our guest today author, professor, and president of Mountain State Press, Kat Pleska. And Kat Pleska was born in Hurricane, West Virginia. She grew up there and also in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. She's the only child of Gene and Vernon Hodges. She married Dan Pleska in 1973, and they have one daughter, Katie. They also share their home in Scott Depot with Lexi, who's a Dutch Shepherd, and a Bombay cat named Charlotte Bronte, and a black and white tuxedo cat named Virginia Woolf. Kat holds a VA in English from West Virginia State University, an MA in Humanities from Marshall, and an MFA in Creative Nonfiction from Galshire College. She's a regular writer for Wonderful West Virginia magazine and is an essayist on West Virginia Public Radio with 40 essays aired since 2007. Her radio essay Unexpected Harvest was published in 2008 in Hamilton Stone Review, and she also has essays published in Folklife, Constellations, and in the Encyclopedia of West Virginia. She's the editor of Fed from the Blade, an anthology of stories and tales published by Woodlands Press, and she's currently teaching English at West Virginia State University and is the director of the West Virginia State University Writing Center. And she was born on Halloween, and that means her life takes mysterious twists and turns at times, and she wouldn't have it any other way. And we are delighted to have Kat Pleska here with us today. Kat, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
Let me ask you a little bit about your writing background and how you got started in writing, and why did you decide to pursue this as a craft?
Well, my family, my parents are voracious readers, and my mother read to me when I was small, and I loved it. I loved my time with her, and reading was very special. And as I grew, got a little older, I began to be fascinated with the stories and how it evokes the imagination. But I actually didn't know how books were, written, and I didn't know what an author looked like, or how they existed. For all I knew, it was 100 monkeys pounding on typewriter. I didn't know how that happened. And then when I was a young teen, I went to Marlinton to pioneer days there, and we were on the main street and had bleachers there, and it was a parade going through, and it started to rain, and I was short enough that I could slip under the bleachers to be protected from the rain a little bit, and I was looking at all the legs hanging out in front of me, and one pair was a pair of old lady legs with blue varicose veins and old lady black shoes, this sort of thing. And I was kind of studying those veins when I heard the mayor say, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our First Lady of Literature, Pearl Buck." I was directly under Pearl Buck. Wow. And so I thought, and I knew, we had read, had studied her in 5th grade, Good Earth and this sort of thing. And so I thought, if they've got varicose veins on their legs, they must be real people. Somewhere in the back of my mind, it wasn't a conscious thought, but in the back of my mind, I thought, maybe I can become an author, someday, for real individuals. And from that point on, I really started writing, just, coming of age stuff, things you do when you're a teenager. I married young. I married in 1973 after I graduated from high school, and I was only 2. No, I'm just kidding. So somebody's doing the math, I was only 2. No. And it was 18 years before I decided that, I've got the nerve to go to college. I was an honor student in high school, but I didn't know. Nobody back then said, you know what, you might want to consider college, as a woman, And so I did go, and I knew right from the very beginning that I wanted to be an English major and I wanted to be a writer. And so I did. I majored in English, and then I got the humanities degree, and then finally the creative nonfiction degree. And all along, I was writing, and it's been in the last 10 years that writing has become so much a part of my life that I can no longer separate myself from words, any longer. It's just simply, I am words. That's what I am. And increasingly, I'm finding requests, to say, hey, how about writing for this blog? Or, how about doing an article here? How about doing, so it's been delightful. Very busy.
Yeah.
Very, very busy. But I've been appreciative of the opportunities that have come along to showcase my writing.
That's great.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you a little bit, too, because we'll talk about some of the different things that you do, both as a writer and a teacher and president of Mountain State Press. But how do you balance it all? Because we have so many writers that have so many different ways that they handle this. But how do you handle finding the time to write around your other responsibilities that you have?
I don't balance. I don't balance. I hit the ground running every morning. And until I fall in bed at night, it's insane, I will admit. People are saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? But it seems as if everything happens at once. I said recently at a presentation, it's like it took 40 years to be an overnight success. And I'm still not there yet. I'm still not really there with all kinds of books and that sort of thing, but I'm headed in that direction. And I don't balance it well, and every now and then I fall down. I get sick, or and I don't advise it for anybody, to do what I'm doing, but there must be a part of me that loves it, all of the different kinds of things that I do, and I do, and but I kind of trade off. Okay, today I'm going to be writing, tomorrow I'm going to be editing, these 2 days I'm going to be teaching, and so I've got to do lesson preps and grading and all that sort of thing. So no, it's not balanced at all. Don't let anybody tell you that. They're lying.
That's right. That's very true.
Yeah.
But still managed to find time to get it done, which is important.
Yeah, and I find a little bit of time for my husband and my daughter and my cats and my dog and my friends.
That's good.
Yeah, I just spent yesterday with a couple of friends, and we just had just a calm afternoon with a good dinner, a little bit of wine. That helps.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about that. I wanted to ask you, we mentioned a few moments ago that you're a regular essayist on West Virginia Public Radio, and you've had over 40 of those aired since 2007. How did that start for you? How did you get involved in that project?
Well, sometimes that regardless of what your art is, or your craft, or your job, that there are some just fluke luck things. You've got to be prepared when that luck comes along, when that thing happens. But I had gone to a workshop with a wonderful essayist, radio essayist, as a matter of fact, Colleen Anderson. And she was going to do a little workshop on radio essays, and I developed an essay during that workshop. And that evening at the workshop, we read. She asked all of the students to read our essays, and she listened to mine, and she suggested to me. She said, "I think maybe you want to approach the radio and maybe they'll take your essay to read." Well, I did a stupid thing. I didn't do anything. I was too nervous, and I hadn't really thought about what that meant to be a radio essayist up to that point. It was just kind of like, oh, let's try this out. I love to hear them on the radio, and so I didn't do anything. And about 10, 11 days later, Colleen called me, and she said, "Did you contact the news director?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well, I did, and he's expecting you to contact him." And I was like, okay. So I did. He loved the essay, Unexpected Harvest, and he called me in. I came in the next day, and he said, "Sit down to the table. I want to hear how you sound." He really liked my voice. For a woman's voice, it's a little bit deeper, so it makes it easier to be on radio when you have I hadn't practiced a voice, but I guess from teaching all that time,
Sure.
It taught me to speak in front of the public and that sort of thing. So the rest, as they say, is history. So they invited me back over and over again. And
So how often do you find yourself with essays that appear on West Virginia Public Radio?
well, originally in the first several years, it was like they wanted it at least once a month. Mm-hmm. But that's a pretty demanding schedule, and I was very appreciative of it, and I tried to do it. But writing radio essays is a very particular kind of writing. You can't go over a certain word limit, and it's got to be all wrapped up and be a local voice, but have a universal message, and it's extremely challenging to do that. But boy, does it teach you to edit. It's one of the best editing tools I've ever had, because you got to make words work. You know, just a few of them work to encompass a huge idea. And so then they went about a year and a half last year, you know, before that they reorganized, and I didn't do any essays. But then they invited me back again, and so I've actually only been back and done a couple so far, but I'd like to do, I haven't done one for February, but I've got an idea for March. And you've got to come up with all these ideas, you know, on your own.
Yeah.
You know, they don't give you any subject matter, but they also open it to me to be able to write about anything I want to. But they do like a focus on a slice of life, especially in Appalachia and that sort of thing. So, and that's what I happen to be good at since I've been writing my memoir for 15 years.
Excellent. You know. Very good. That's great. That's great. I wanted to ask you, too, one of your duties that has been added to what you do in terms of keeping a busy schedule here recently has been you've recently assumed the duties of being the president of Mountain State Press.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Mountain State Press. I think it's a press that a lot of people have heard about, but maybe a lot of people don't know some of the specifics or the details. Can you tell us a little bit about Mountain State Press and how you got involved with being the president of the company?
Yes. Well, Mountain State Press has been around now 36 years. And it was originally formed to be the publishing arm of West Virginia writers, and it didn't work out that way, but it's been run by a board for a long time. I mean, that's how it functions. It's a nonprofit. It's a little independent press, and so because of, you know, there's not a whole lot of revenue coming in for a nonprofit, we could only publish maybe 3 or 4 books a year, you know, at our expense. You know, it's not the author's expense. And for the last 13 years, before I took over as president, Bill Hayden was the president of the press, and then he passed away last April. And I had been affiliated with the press off and on. In the mid-90s, I was so serious about my writing, I thought, well, how does the publishing process work? I thought if I learned that, maybe it would give me a leg up on, you know, when I get ready to put my work out there. So I approached them and I interned with them a little bit, and then I joined the board. And so I became a board member, and I edited, you know, as kind of like an ad hoc editor. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 books so far, you know, before, and then affiliated off and on as an editor. And when shortly before Bill passed away, he contacted me and said, would you be interested in, you know, taking over the reins, because you've been affiliated with it, you know how it's run, that sort of thing. And I did. I did not do it easily, because it is time-consuming, you know, and it's a nonprofit. I don't get paid. You know, there's no salary or anything. That's not that you can't, but there's just not enough money.
Right.
You know, and there is an administrative assistant that does get paid, Rhonda Castle, and she's, oh my gosh, when I took over, I was like, oh, don't you go anywhere, because you know where all the bodies are buried.
Right.
You know, I need
That's
you.
Right.
I need you. And I learned a great deal. It was a wonderful experience being affiliated with the press, you know, to learn the ins and outs about publishing. And since I took over last May 1st, it's been yet another learning curve, just learning, you know, the ins and outs on a day-to-day basis, you know, how. And I think if you want to look at the press, you can look at it this way, you know, what is it? Mountain State Press, when I've studied the history of it, and I have a graduate student working with me now, her name is Brenna Craig. She's actually writing the history of Mountain State Press for her project. And it's been a press, and Brenna kind of showed this to me, because she's on the outside studying it. It's been a press that's given almost everybody their first chance to be published. And that may be why a lot of people don't know a lot about it, because it seems as if most of the authors then went on to publish with larger presses, you know. And so, but we gave them a chance, you know, and we're still doing that. You know, I've got 3 new books coming up, and all, you know, 3 of them are, well, one has been published before, but it's been quite, you know, a while. So we give them the opportunity, and I think that's a tremendous mission too. And our emphasis, while we're open to manuscripts from anybody in Appalachia, which, by the way, is 29 million people. Our emphasis and focus is giving West Virginians a chance, West Virginia authors, or authors who are writing books that are set in West Virginia, is an emphasis. But we've just recently opened it up to all of Appalachia.
I was going to ask you, too, along those lines, and you talked a little bit about the board and the processes that you undertake on a day-to-day basis. Let's say I submit a manuscript to Mountain State Press and it arrives in your office. Can you take us through a timeline of what happens to that manuscript, maybe prior to publication, or what happens when that manuscript arrives at Mountain State Press's offices? And I guess we should point out, too, that those are housed at the University of Charleston.
Yes, it is. It's been there since probably 1979, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, it's there. And, well, at this point, I look at the manuscript. And one of the first things I'll look at is, does it meet the guidelines, that we've established on our website and that sort of thing. And you'd be surprised. Unfortunately, a lot of people will send, and they didn't look at it very closely, and they're sending things that we've said in there that we can't publish. But that's what I do initially. Right now, I'm the reader. But I do have other people that I feel are highly qualified and who are willing to do some reading. So I might parcel it off to somebody, here shortly about, okay, this is your specialty and this is your specialty. So they will be a first reader, and there may be a second reader that I require. And then there's a kind of a sheet that they follow. There's a bunch of questions that we ask so that they can respond. They know how to respond to the manuscript to see if it's a possibility. Right now, ultimately, I'm the final decision. Because I have to be responsible for what is going out, representing the press, and I'm the one that does it right yet. And I'm planning. I have plans to build it, make it bigger. I hope. I hope.
How many manuscripts would you say you get maybe in a month? I mean, is it a situation where you're just inundated? Because we've had some other publishers on, and they said, I'm just overwhelmed. I could stack the manuscripts up, and it would be floor to ceiling high of people that send me things. Do you find that's the same with Mountain State Press?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, not yet. But I expect as I build, as I do more PR about the press, and I get my new 3 authors out there and some of the other ones out, promoting their books, I expect to get, more. But I would say maybe right now I'm only getting maybe a half a dozen.
Okay.
A month.
Okay.
Which right now, that's a good thing.
Sure, absolutely.
Since I'm the one that's, doing it. But I think it'll pick up. As they see the books that we're going to put out here coming up, I think they're going to be good sellers, and I think they'll say, well, maybe I should consider them. We're not a press that can give you an advance, but we try to work with you on royalties, and we try to give you some free copies that you can go out and sell on your own, and as you know, with anybody, even with the big publishers in New York, you have to do pretty much your own marketing now,
right.
And we're not big enough to do a whole lot. We do what we can.
Sure.
We help the author try to set up some signings and some readings and that sort of thing, but we have to expand that too.
How long does it take to get a book where it's ready to be distributed from the time the manuscript? We get that question a lot here on the show. I have this manuscript and I've sent it off to some publishers, and how long does that process take, or is it different from press to press? How long does it take at Mountain State Press?
It will differ from press to press because it depends on your readers. It depends on their money situation. A year with me so far, because I don't have so many manuscripts at this point. That may change, but most presses work about 2 years out. Okay. If you sent me a manuscript and I accepted it next month, I would hope to get you in print and being distributed next summer. And it's not that it takes that long. It's not that it's that long a process, but there are any number of things that can fall down and hang you up. I have book designers. I have to work with their schedules, and I have to be able to format the text. I have to be able to proof it and find proofers. That will help me.
Sure.
So it's just a lengthy process because there's not a whole lot of us.
Right. And you got so many moving
C'est
parts.
moi, mostly me. Yeah, right,
Right.
exactly. But even in bigger presses, university presses, other bigger independent presses, I would say I'm a micro press at this point. But it's a year to 2 years.
A year or 2 years,
Yeah.
okay. I wanted to ask you, too, about Mountain State Press and about those books that you have coming out. Are you at liberty to give us any idea of what they're going to be about without giving
Sure.
too much away?
No, I'll be happy to say. I'm working with a man named Emmett Ferner who has written a book called Hero Birds. This was a manuscript accepted by Bill before I came on, so I'm honoring that contract. He's a chaplain in the Army, and Hero Birds are Black Hawk helicopters that are dedicated to bringing out the dead out of Iraq and Afghanistan. And he was in Afghanistan a year, and he put himself on these Black Hawk helicopters, these Hero Birds, and then would help with the process of bringing out the deceased soldiers and see them. Sometimes he would come back to the States and visit with the family and this sort of thing. So it's a very much, you're just like, wow. Finding out that process is kind of amazing. And he also puts a little bit of, he's from Wood County, Parkersburg, so he's got some memoir, elements in it as well. Kirk Judd, Kirk?
Sure do.
He's coming out with our press with a collection of poems, and then some of the poems he is in the studio recording them.
Great.
So it's going to be, I'm excited about it.
That's great.
It's a book and CD package.
Wonderful.
And so I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully I'll have that out, hopefully by the end of March, but maybe it might not be till April. But he's working with musicians like, Dave Bing and Robin Kessler and those sort of things.
Sure.
And then the other one is working title, Diner Stories. I asked Daniel McTaggart, who has done diner poems, and he keeps a Facebook site about diners. And it's such an all-American thing. It's just, we all love our diners. And to set up any kind of stories in it, can be fiction, nonfiction, memoir, it could be anything. And so we've closed that submission now, and we've got some wonderful stories. They just blew my socks off. I can't wait till that comes out. It's going to be a lot of fun, fun reading all the different kinds of stories that are in it.
Well, it sounds great, and we certainly
Yeah.
look forward to that, and we'll mention those on future programs as well as
Okay.
they come out.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, I know you edited an anthology that came
Yes.
out not too long ago called Fed from the Blade,
Yes.
Tales and Poems from the Mountains, but and I'll let you have an opportunity to read from the intro in just a second,
Okay.
but I wanted to ask you before you do, has being involved with Mountain State Press and being now sort of on the editing side of things and making decisions about publications of manuscripts, has that changed you as a writer on the other side in any way?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe just aware of what's out there and what an audience might expect and this sort of thing. I don't think it's changed a whole lot because I've been affiliating myself with the press all along, so I'm kind of aware, maybe more of how press works and what I can expect. It's given me a lot of patience.
Sure.
That sort of thing. So I don't think it's really changed my writing a whole lot, but working with Keith Davis in Woodland Press has been an education too. I've appreciated his help. When I took over this press, I was a little bit, I've been affiliated with it, but not with the run, day-to-day running. So he's been very helpful in that sense. So the writing maybe has just made me more aware of how important it is that I just don't drop the ball on anything. I just make it as perfect as I can.
I understand.
And that's why my memoir's not published yet.
I totally understand. I understand that totally because I think we all have those writing projects
Yes.
that are hanging in the back
Yes.
closet that we just can't
Yes.
quite get finished.
Well, I do want to say that my collection of radio essays is currently with WVU Press. Fingers crossed. I don't know. I'm hoping. But I named it Radioactive.
Great.
Essays aired on West Virginia Public Radio. So I hope they do it. I hope they do.
Well, I certainly do
But
too.
being on the publishing side, I know what I'm very patient with them. Then I know what it takes
Sure.
to
Absolutely.
do. So that's helped.
Oh, good. Very
to be
good.
just patient.
Yes. And glad to hear that. Well,
Yeah.
I want to give you an opportunity to
Okay.
read from the introduction of Fed from the Blade, and
Okay.
We'll turn it over to you and let you read some from the introduction.
Okay, thank you. West Virginia, what an extraordinary place it is, as is all of Appalachia. And our land is known for its many storytellers continually bringing forward their enriching tales. I was excited to be asked to edit an anthology for Woodland Press and to extend the call for what I knew would be wonderful stories. But the challenge that followed. Who could have guessed we would receive 170 submissions? This became one of those moments when it is hard to accept the reality of limits, to select stories knowing that practical constraints play their role in any book, including this anthology. I read and read without knowing who created each piece of art because I was president of the organization whose members were submitting, and I wanted to be fair. As I considered the entries, a certain kinship among the stories developed. Not a similarity in style, as each author's work in this project carries a distinctive voice, but a sort of reaching out across the ether to one another, some sensibility, a bonding as to tone or mood. And in the end, I chose based on those sensibilities. This spirit of kinship led to a feeling of cohesion. It always does. For me, selecting works for this anthology meant finding a connection to link poems, fiction, and nonfiction, because I wanted these eclectic stories, as diverse and as different as the individuals who wrote them, to jive in a book. I am making this sound as if it was a smooth and easy process, but there was a struggle, especially when we needed to name this anthology. My fellow editor, Michael Nost, and I couldn't seem to agree. Fortunately, one night we were witness to a reading of the poem I Am the Daughter by Sherelle Weigel, and there it was. The title pulled from a line in her poem, which is included in this anthology. Perfect. So, dear reader, celebrate with us this diversity of offerings. Allow yourself to be drawn to the characters, the settings, and the circumstances. Submerge yourself in the imagery, the language, the humorous and dark stories, the spooky and paranormal, the tragic romance, the drama, the rejoicing, and the heartbreak. But what is most important? The tale well told. This collection represents the tip of the iceberg concerning the writing talent, in this case, amongst members of the West Virginia Writers Incorporated. Enjoy.
Fantastic. Kat Pleska, thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
If anyone is interested in getting a copy of this book or contacting Mountain State Press or getting in contact with you, how's the best way they can do that?
Well, to get a copy of Fed from the Blade, you can just Google Woodland Press. And it's also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, so you can find it there. And for Mountain State Press, it's mountainstatepress.org. You can reach me there anytime.
Great. Kat Pleska, author, essayist, professor, and president of Mountain State Press, thank you so much for being with us on Chapters. It was a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
And we'd also like to thank, as we wrap up this episode of Chapters, the good friends and our friends and the good folks at Empire Books and News here at Pullman Square in downtown Huntington for allowing us to use their facilities for taping this episode of Chapters. And we'd like to remind you that for all your reading needs, we encourage you to stop by and check out Huntington's locally owned and independently owned Empire Books and News. You can find all the books that you'd like, from young adult to children's to latest releases, including the largest selection of magazines in the tri-state as well can be found here at Empire Books and News. And if you've watched previous Chapters episodes and you've seen an author that we've profiled on our show or a publisher that we've profiled on our show, in many times and in many instances, those books are available right here at Empire Books and News. So if you'd like to check out those authors and those titles by those authors, you can certainly stop by and check them out and get them anytime at Empire Books and News. And we appreciate them letting us use their facilities for this taping today. We appreciate it so much. And finally, if you have a question, comment, or suggestion about our program, we'd like to hear from you. You can send us an email right to the show at the address that's on the screen right below me, and that is lp4, letter L, letter P, number 4, at zoominternet.net. We do appreciate all the feedback that we get from you, so keep those emails coming. We do read them, and we do implement the suggestions and the questions and the recommendations that you have for Chapters. So we appreciate that very much. But again, lp4 at zoominternet.net is how you can reach us right here on Chapters. Well, that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.